And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge back once again, but this time with something a bit different. Over the last few months I've been working on a specific project. The goal of that project has been to create the internet's most comprehensive reading guide for the DC New 52, bar none. This series is the result of that and will be a series of 29, yes that's 29, comprehensive half-hour videos for readers new to DC. I'll be dropping round about one video every working day going forward from today, so it should be done in about a month. However, before we go any further, I should probably explain what the New 52 actually is. DC Comics has been around in one form or another for something like 70 or 80 years. In that time, the comics have developed a long and complex history with a complicated and convoluted continuity. That word continuity is something we'll come back to time and time again throughout these videos. The result of this long 80-year history was to slowly make the comics less accessible to new readers. As time went on, each issue and series relied upon readers knowing who was related to who had died and been resurrected, who had reformed or turned evil at some point in the past. It made comics more and more like a soap opera, with lots of insider knowledge that made the comics impenetrable to new readers and difficult to know where to jump on. After all, is Superman issue 875 a good starting point? Or Batman 700? To the average person it was both confusing and intimidating, to the point that it put them off. So in 2011 DC made the bold move of cancelling every single comic that they had and relaunching them all. They relaunched them as 52 separate series, and between 2011 and 2016 they had 52 issues apiece. Now, if that had been the case with any consistency, it would have made my job much easier, but unfortunately, many series got cancelled halfway through the New 52, whilst others started at a random point months or even years in. Some series required knowledge of the pre-existing continuity, whilst others didn't. In addition, the New 52 combined the previously separate Wildstorm, Vertigo and standard DC comic universes all into one single combined reality. That made it even more complicated. So I guess the first question is, was the New 52 popular? Well, it depends who you ask. Some people hated it and thought it was terrible. Others liked it, or at least liked certain series within it. For my part, I found it a really useful and clear gateway into the DC universe of comics. Sure, a lot of it was pretty terrible, but a lot of it was also pretty great. More importantly, it gave me a clear framework to work within to improve and develop my own comic knowledge. After reading the New 52, I had a solid anchor point on every character and team that allowed me to either go forward to their ongoing titles or go backwards and read upon their history. And yes, I said I did read the New 52, by which I mean I read it all. The whole thing. Not just the main characters, like Wonder Woman or Batman, but every single New 52 issue. All 3,646 of them in single issues, and in doing so, I found that there was nowhere on the internet that had a comprehensive reading order of the whole thing, not even on Reddit. Oh, and in case you're wondering what that would look like, I'm showing you my local second-hand comic store, where I sourced all the issues from, right here. So in addition, I've seen questions in various comment sections and in various live shows where people have been asking about reading orders for the New 52, where to jump on, where is a good place to start or stop, and so on. And even now in 2019, it represents a closed 5-year universe that was designed, successfully I feel, despite its many other flaws, as an entry point for new readers. So the continuing interest is understandable. Of course, making a comprehensive reading order is no easy thing, and that's because there are, broadly speaking, two types of comic readers. I'm going to call them Type P and Type J. Type P readers are the ones who believe that there is, somehow and somewhere, a perfect reading order to a series. They want to believe that somehow the various creative teams of writers, editors and so on all had some kind of huge overarching perfectly designed master plan from day one, like a perfect jigsaw. And they want to be in on that. They like reading guides that might say things like read issues 1 to 4 and then the epilogue from issue 5, then issues 6 to 9, then 11, then the rest of issue 5, and then issue 10. In other words, they believe that there is some kind of internal continuity that can be deciphered from any series, like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Every cameo appearance or every tangential crossover fits into one larger perfect picture that they firmly believe they can put together. In addition, they believe that every single issue benefits from context. To read story D means that you need to know what happened in story C, which only makes sense after you read story B, which requires you to read story A. It's a kind of infinitely regressive tendency that means that every issue requires another one to be read first. And this is what I call the mindset of a comic reading completionist. The type J reader is the one that describes me much better. Consider them the more fluid and chaotic jigsaw makers. They have a much more casual approach. Okay, this is what's happening? Fine, I'll run with it. They can dip in and out of even the most convoluted soap opera-like comic continuity. The best example of this would be the X-Men, and just take each story as a standalone with very little context. They don't require everything to be exhaustively broken down into page-by-page linear continuity, and don't expect there to be such a thing as a perfect reading order. They're basically okay to get the broad strokes of the story straight, and then sort of stitch it together in their own minds. Sometimes this means that they can go back years later to reread something and, having read much more in the interim, suddenly appreciate lots of things they didn't notice before. That's me, and that's the mindset of what I call a comic reading casual. Now, I don't use the words completionist or casual in a judgmental way, and neither do I think that people fall into only one category or the other. Like all mindsets, people fall into the spectrum somewhere between one and the other. I only say this to highlight that this guide is designed with the casual reader in mind. Casual readers like me, at least, who will still read an entire universe of over 3,500 issues. So, anyway, this guide is a combination of these two approaches. It will focus on every single collector's edition, trade paperback or hardcover in the New 52, arranged by trade collection, so volume by volume, and also by family tree. That means I've clumped all the Superman comics together, for example, or all the Batman comics. It would include spin-offs, tie-ins, crossovers, and what I call false crossovers, but isn't intended as an exhaustive list of experiences. I'm not a Type P collector. The one last thing I do want to say is that the New 52, despite all its critics, has going for it is this. It is one of the longest running, most consistently formatted comic universes out there. In a world where most comic shops look like utter carnage, with a variety of different heights, formats, colours and fonts all within a single series, the DC Collector's Edition department really created something quite special for collectors with the New 52. So whilst most Western comics look a bit like a disaster on the shelf, and most manga tends to have a concerted consistency of appearance and style, the New 52 is an exception. On that note, I expect this is a large part of the reason that manga as a comics form is only beginning to become more and more popular. New readers know clearly where to start with issue 1, and it all looks lovely on their shelf. That's why the New 52 is worth highlighting. For once, you have a clear house style of height, format, colour and font. There's literally no other Western comic run I can think of that can match it for sheer collecting ease and consistency over such a large period. But how am I going to discuss this? A list of random comics? A walkthrough of my collection? Interpretive dance? No. The comprehensive reading map, and the map I'll be talking you through for the rest of the series, looks like this. I'll give you a second to just take that in. And here we are. Now, I know that this looks incredibly complicated and impenetrable, but it isn't. Over the next 28 videos, I'm going to go through each part of this map, slowly and bit by bit. I'm going to provide a clear, practical guide for every single New 52 line, with a brief summary and breakdown of what you need to know to understand this comic. This video, which is the introduction to the guide, is going to cover some basic principles of the map that I'm simply not going to cover again in any other videos. As such, it's essential viewing that you watch this before you watch any of the other videos in this series. On that note, here are 3 things you need to know before you watch any of my New 52 videos. Firstly, DC continuity. DC continuity has always been a bit of a mess. Their first attempt to fix it was in the 1985 series Crisis on Infinite Earths. They followed this with Infinite Crisis in 2005, not to be confused with Identity Crisis in 2004. And they eventually finished this trilogy of continuity crises in 2008 with Final Crisis. These crises did not really work to streamline or clear up the continuity of the DC Comics universe, so the New 52 was launched in 2011. Interestingly, at New York Comic Con in October 2019, Dan Didio, who's the co-head of DC Comics, revealed that DC Comics were working on a full and formal timeline for all their comics to sort out and explain continuity once and for all. Now, this is a terrible idea for reasons I might discuss one day in the future, but for now all you need to know is that the draft timeline looks a bit like this and splits DC's comic history into 4 distinct eras. The last era is the one that began with Flashpoint, contains the New 52, and also contains DC Rebirth. Now, DC Rebirth represents a distinct change from the New 52, and it's something that I'll be covering in the final video of this series, which is going to be video 14.1. And that's honestly all you need to know about continuity in general. I'll cover smaller updates in each video as and when you need them, but only when you need them. The second important thing to keep in mind is the magic number, 52. This is easy to get confused on. DC has used the number 52 for lots of different things, so it's easy to get confused here, and I'm going to break it down carefully. The New 52 has nothing to do with a series by DC called 52, which actually came out in 2007. It's available in Omnibus, and you'll find single issues all over the place. It's also nothing to do with a series called Countdown, which immediately followed the series I just mentioned from 2007, 52. It also, and by it I mean the New 52, has nothing to do with the DC 1 million event from 1998. That's available in an Omnibus. I'm aware it's another big number. I'm aware it would seem to be related to something else with a big number, but it's not. DC 1 million is nothing to do with the New 52. So just keep those clear in your mind and don't get confused or sidetracked. Thirdly, big V and little v. Now this bit is really important and really random. I haven't seen any other videos explaining it online or on YouTube, so I really wanted to cover it before we jump into things. I'm going to be using the word volume to discuss the various comics here, but it's important to understand the specific use of that word in comics. The word volume is used to denote a run of comics from issue 1 onwards. This can be a short run of a handful of issues, or a long run spanning many creators and several decades. I know that's complicated, so I'll give you an example. Let's look at Wikipedia. Uncanny X-Men Volume 1 ran from 1960 to 2011, which was such a long time that it's handily split here by Wikipedia into 3 different eras. It has issues 1 all the way up to 544. Then they decided to renumber it, so that's where you have Volume 2, which started at issue 1 again and ran from 2011 to 2012. It has 20 issues. Volume 3 again started at issue 1 and ran from 2013 to 2015. That has 36 issues. And Volume 4, again starting with an issue 1, ran from 2015 to 2016. It only had 19 issues. Right now we're on Volume 5, which has started with issue 1 yet again, and it ran from 2018 to 2019 for only 10 issues. Now that should make sense. Good. Now those are all what could be considered different eras or series, as I call them, as volumes with a big V. Now to explain what I mean next, let's dive into Volume 3 of Uncanny X-Men. You'll see here Volume 3, which as we just said ran from 2013 to 15 and was 36 issues. However, if you were to buy this or read it, you would pick up the trade paperback collections or hardcover collections. These are also, very confusingly, called volumes. So in other words, Uncanny X-Men Volume 3, Volume 5 collects issues 26 to 31. So in other words, that's volume with a big volume with a big V, 3, and volume with a small v, 5, collects issues 26 to 31. So you can see why this is confusing, right? As such, for my videos, I will be discussing volumes with a big V and volumes with a small v. When I say volumes with a big V, I mean when the series gets rebooted from issue 1. This can also be considered an era of a comic, with a single numbered run from 1 up to whatever. Then when I'm referring to volume with a small v, I'm talking about the actual trade collection that you might buy in your local comic shop. So here, this is volume 5, and that's volume with a small v called the Omega Mutant. However, remember, it's within volume 3, and that's volume with a big V. I know this is confusing, but hey, that's the world we live in. To try to keep it from getting complicated, I will generally be referring to a single physical bound collection of comics you can purchase, so any volume with a small v, as trade collections. And with that out of the way, here are the basic principles of my New 52 map that you should know before you dive into the reading order videos. I'm going to zoom around and show you the areas that I'm talking about as I do it. Try to keep up. Number 1, in the center here, you've got Flashpoint. And this is the Flashpoint event. The comics then radiate out from the center, starting with issue 1 of each series. All the issue 1s were also collected in a single omnibus, called the New 52 Omnibus, which I wouldn't recommend either buying or reading. The next event, which isn't shown on the map here, is 0 Month. This is a publishing decision that was made 12 months into the New 52, where every series had an issue 0 that served as a bit of a flashback or origin story. All the issue 0s are collected in an omnibus. You can see it here, which again I would not recommend you buy or read. There's a couple of things to remember here. 0 Month was a publishing event in the real world, not a comic event in the comics continuity. It is not the same as 0 Year, which is a much later event in the New 52 that does happen inside the comics universe, and it's mainly Batman focused. We're going to cover that in video 5.1. It also has nothing to do with the 0 Hour event in the 1990s. That looks like this, and an omnibus of it was recently released. Okay, we're clear on that? Great. Moving on, I now want to show you this particular red line. Now, the thing about this particular red line is that it crosses the entire New 52. You can see it here as a dotted red line, and as I pan out, you will see it around that whole circle there. It's the inner red line. This is what I call the Forever Evil event that happens round about issue 23 and has far-reaching repercussions for many, although not all, of the New 52 comics. You may hear me also refer to this as the Villains Month event, which will be made all clear when we get to that part of the video series. Allow me to stress, New 52 DC Villains Month is nothing whatsoever to do with the 2019 DC Year of the Villain event. The next thing I want to talk about is this red line right here. This is the second one. And this second red line here, as you can see, is what I call the DC-wide convergence line. It happened around issue 40. Now, I'm not going to talk about convergence or Future's End or any of those things today. This is all pretty complicated already, and it's separately covered in videos 7.1 and 7.2. The important thing to understand about convergence from a publishing or collecting point of view is that the trade collections, hardcover or paperback, change the colour of their spines after the convergence event. You can see here that they were black before convergence and red after. There are a few exceptions to this, and you can see the blue spines already, but those will be discussed when appropriate. This part of the map, which is outside or after the convergence line, is something that is called DCU, spelt DCYOU. This represents a lot of new series and relaunches by DC, and was the final era of the New 52 before it transitioned into DC Rebirth. You can see the advertising campaign for it here. Finally, each family of comics has their own tie-ins and crossovers, like Death of the Family for Batman, or God's Head for Green Lantern. Now, whilst I cover every single one of these tie-ins and crossovers here, I am using a very particular set of terms for these. A crossover is an event that has a separate event book that exists, collecting all the issues in it. I've carefully designed this map so that it contains all crossover issues next to each other, so you can just group them easily. For example, Death of the Family is grouped here, and the Godhead crossover can be grouped here. Now, I won't be doing these pictures for each crossover as they're pretty unnecessary, but I will be including comprehensive reading orders on screen that you can pause and refer to. I will only do this once each time though, the first time they come up, so keep your eyes peeled. Now, separate to a crossover, a tie-in is an event where issues from different series cross over, but for some reason, DC have not seen fit to release a standalone event book combining all these issues, and just combine the necessary issues in the general trade collections as they come up. There are also some tie-ins that feature in videos 5.2 and 8.1 respectively that I call false crossovers, as it's criminal that DC didn't release combined event books for them. I'll cover them when it makes sense to do so. So there we are. That's the introduction for my ultimate New 52 reading guide. After this video, I'm going to be putting up shorter, bite-sized videos slowly guiding you through the New 52. These will be split into 14 different families, and the larger ones, so Batman for example, will be split further into decimals. Don't worry, I'll label those clearly, so the Batman ones for example will be the video series 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, and so on. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, please like, comment, subscribe, and share more widely. I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on the New 52 and on this series of videos as it progresses. Is it helpful or clear enough? Let me know in the comments below or tweet me at @IamThomasJudge. And as always, these videos are only possible thanks to supporting this channel by heading over to Amazon.com and picking up the first episode of my prose novel, No Gods or Kings, which gives you over 200 pages for less than $1. A series of interviews from a future where superpowers are real and the entire world has changed dramatically as a result. If you had Kindle Unlimited, the first volume is completely free anyway. For those of you that are interested in downloading the map and infographic that I've created for this video, it's available for free as a 6 MB PNG file. This is compressed down from the 9 GB original, so it's not as high resolution and is still a little unwieldy in a standard image viewer. I'd recommend viewing it in something like the GNU image manipulation program that I'm using for these videos. You can find the map on my website, nogodsorkings.com, which is in the description below. And so whilst you're there, why not pick up the first book and support the channel? Until next time, stay classy.